Il faut que il y ait les mêmes cartes. C'est international.
Il y a deux possibilités. Bien, nous au sommet. Il y a plus de cartement. Ça sort pour
c'est comme ça.
Bien, chaque peine sans.
Les bons effets B, les chefs
colleagues who have traveled all these long distances to be here in Ghana for the first ever African Regional Conference of Pen Centers. Those of us in the Ghanaian Center deem it a great honor that our colleagues have agreed to allow us to host them for these 3 days. We're hoping that the outcome of this conference will be the pillars that will shape the direction of African centers, Paramata, PAN, as we now have it. Once again, we say Akwaaba to everybody here. Let me first introduce who we have on my right here on the high table. You know, the level is the same. It's still the high table. I'm not going in any order apart from the nearest to me. And as we all know her, she is the person steering the affairs of International Pen. She is the International Secretary. And she's no other person than John Leedom Ackerman, National Secretary of the International Pen, our captain at the moment, steering International Pen to a new height. Next to her, I would jump and move to the other person in a brown, shiny suit. That's Mr. Frank Mackay Anim-Appiah, who is the president of the Ghanaian Center. In fact, Frank has been in the chair for quite a while. He had many times volunteered to opt out of the seat, but many of us have asked him many times to stay on. Democratically, actually. Next to him is Mr. Harruna. Attah. He's one of our 3 vice presidents. And apart from being vice president, he's been a real pillar for any kind of organization that we do, running around. For this conference, I began the discussion, everything with him while I was away. He hasn't been all that healthy for the last few months, but despite that, he was running around in traffic in all the heat against the advice of the doctors. So Mr. Attah, I think I have to thank you personally for doing most of the job that I would have done if I were here personally. Now I have a singular honor to introduce our fine gentleman in the dark suit. He's been someone who has been one of the strong pillars that the Ghanaian Center has always fallen on. A great poet, author, educationist, is a professor of literature, head of Department of the English Department of the University of Ghana, director of African Humanities Institute program. He at a point in time was the director of School of Performing Arts of the University of Ghana, and one time president of the African Literature Association. A very great poet, not only in English, that is official language, but probably in the mother tongue of Ewe. His very recent work includes a poetry and songs, which have been put on CDs with songs by his own mother. You could see the connection here. Madam Abdul-Rahman, apart from giving birth to him, she is still supporting whatever he is doing in his field. I'm talking about Professor Kofi. Those of you who have got the original program, the other pillar to Prof is Professor Attah. So between them, we asked one to chair and one to give a poetry. So Amma was given the chairmanship. I'm sure most women will still contest the chairman or chairpersonship, but at the last minute, Amma traveled, and Prof readily agreed to take on the chair. And because many of us are eager not only to see him, but to see him and hear him, he's also agreed to do a poetry on this program. So I wouldn't want to bother him so much with running to this program. I will hand the mic to him for a few words. Then after that, I will run a program for him to save him from moving up and down. So I will call on the chairman to say a few words of acceptance, then we can move from this point. Thank you very much.
introductory remarks, I must take the opportunity to also add my voice of welcome to that of my brother here. It is a very singular privilege and honor for us to be hosting this meeting, especially not too long after PEN has been in the news internationally. As for opening remarks, let me put that on hold and maybe clear my head properly for the closing remarks. But please feel welcome. I must take the opportunity also to bring to the meeting, even though my mandate was to explain this to the executive, another colleague, a very senior colleague, in the person of Professor Kofi Awoonor, who was to have been with us this morning, called me yesterday. He had been trying very desperately to get in touch with the President and the Secretary to give his regrets to the fact that he had to run home because of a death in the family. But he definitely sends his regards and welcome to everybody at this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. I will now call on Mr. Frank Mackay to give you a welcome address.
International Secretary of PEN, Joanne, Ackerman. The representative of the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association. Representatives of African PEN centers, colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Ghana is making another history. For about 47 years ago, our Vice President, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, brought together 8 African heads of state in this city of Accra to lay the foundation of what has now become the African Union. The Ghanaian PEN Center, under the auspices of International PEN and UNESCO, are organizing this conference. Mr. Chairman, 1 month after assuming the reins of government in 2001, His Excellency President John Kufuor met with the International Secretary, Dr. Terry Kabo, former board member Professor Vincent Magombe, some executive members of the Ghanaian PEN Center, and representatives of our youth clubs from Upper East and the Upper West regions. President Kufuor's keen interest shown in our clubs and his promise to assist the Ghanaian PEN Center in any way possible gladdened the hearts of our International Secretary at that time. For most part of the decade, International PEN has emphasized the development of East African centers, and since 1997, largely in partnership with UNESCO, they have supported many literary and educational activities and seminars of PEN centers throughout the continent. At East 2003 Assembly of Delegates meeting in Mexico City, members unanimously accepted the offer of Senegal PEN Center to host the 2007 World Congress in Dakar on behalf of African PEN centers. Dakar 2007 will focus on intercultural and cultural diversity in both African and universal contexts. It may be of interest to know that African PEN centers and International PEN plan a number of preparatory meetings in support of the Congress that is to come on in Dakar 2007. so as to facilitate the work of the Senegal Pen Center towards 2007. The meeting in Accra here is one of such preparations. Mr. Chairman, the Ghana Seminar and Planning Meeting has brought together representatives from about 20 African pen centers and international pen to finalize the themes and sub-themes of the 2007 Congress. The current gathering will also plan Congress literary programs of formal roundtables, informal workshops, and a parallel literary program. Here, representatives will be invited to speak on any of the shortlisted Congress themes in the context of their own cultures or from a wider African or global perspective. They will be given an opportunity to consider Africa's languages and literary traditions, including its oral literature, oral traditions, and how these can be incorporated into 2007 Congress. One of the literary sections will be given over to an exploration of discussions of Congress themes from a Ghanaian perspective. There will also be a literary evening and poetry reading, and a special session is planned on the way forward for African pen centers. The shortlisted themes include literature and the environment, African writing in the new age, in and out of Africa, the role of literature in the creation of peace, oral literature, literature and oral tradition, the world, and human values. Mr. Chairman, while it is true that some writers and journalists sometimes tend to be agents and promoters of dictators on our continent, it is incontrovertible that on most occasions, the written word has been articulated vividly with overreaching goals and values used to drive daily behaviors and choices among competing political alternatives. Anytime that occurred, society was able to identify good from bad leadership on the continent. Africa needs a political leadership that practices active and deliberate listening, active, deliberate, and attentive listening. In this connection, I urge my colleagues to wisely use the written word to assist our leaders in their difficult task of governance, to enable them to relieve the citizens of the pain and suffering that have been hanging on our necks for decades. The huge sacrifices of our people must be translated into real development and prosperity, which in turn should positively touch the life of the ordinary man in any country in Africa. This calls for balance, fairness, honesty, responsibility, integrity, and truth. This will only be achievable if the word is used constructively and applied as a driving force to propel our national goals into action. Surely, we neither have the solutions to all the problems of our countries, nor are we experts in every field of human endeavor. And I say this, in application to my colleagues in the media, like my vice president. He has been working very hard, and during those days, we became the opposition of this country because we belong to the private media. That's why. But we have won freedom beautifully, and it goes with responsibility. Mr. Chairman, instead of wrongly applying the word to damage the and hurt reputation of individuals and organizations, the written word must, of necessity, be handled maturely to nurture and protect institutions of state. The greatest disservice we could ever do to this continent is to destroy the gains of the past, no matter how insignificant one might calculate them. We should desist from hiding under the canopy of freedom of expression and using our brushes, pens, typewriters, computers, microphones, and pencils to inflict a heavy and incalculable damage to civil rule. To maintain such stance will only be a play into the dirty corridors of hungry, power-thirsty, and so-called redeemers, who only deceptively steal power and line their pockets. Mr. Chairman, literature should take us back to our roots, to tap the richness of our arts, culture, and languages that were the pride of our ancestors in the kingdoms and empires they established with meticulous care and courage. Our children are fast losing touch with our heritage. This heritage was dutifully passed on by our ancestors, but now what we see is that it is just dying very, very fast. It is with a sense of humility and pride that I welcome you all to our beautiful country of Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mackay. That is true, our children are going out of our heritage, but I can assure you that with playing youth clubs coming out strongly, I'm sure that we are not going to lose everything. I can promise you that, from what they've done so far. We're supposed to have fraternal greetings from our very close friends and collaborators, the Ghana Journalists Association, and then Pan-African Association of Writers. I know the GJA President, Awoonor, is out of Accra, and I also know that he got a Vice President, he's got a General Secretary. We've been on phone for days now trying to get in touch with any of them. I'm not too sure which of the two will be coming. But for now, we have a rep of the power here. Our friend and colleague, Professor Attah, has been close with us. Every 15th November, if he's in town, he will be at our ceremony for the day of the imprisoned writer. Every activity Penn does, we go to his office, we discuss with him, we seek his support, and he always gives. He's out of Accra, and he's asked a member of the Ghana Association of Writers, who's at the Penn Secretariat, at the Power Secretariat, Mr. Vincent Okuno, to read his fraternal greetings to us. Vincent.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Vincent Okuno, I'm not Attah. Professor Attah has been called away on a national exercise at the University of Education at Winneba. So he has asked me to represent him as the Secretary General for Power. I have his speech here, which will permit me, Mr. Chairman, to read. Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow writers, it gives me the very greatest pleasure to be called upon as Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association, Power, to give a fraternal message to this august gathering of international pen UNESCO. I'm particularly proud and extremely gratified to be honored with this privilege, as this is the very first time International Pen UNESCO is organizing such an important conference in Africa, and especially in Accra, Ghana. I cannot but be very grateful for this wonderful opportunity given me. Mr. Chairman, you can be certain that Power pledges its full support and unalloyed solidarity for the noble aims and objectives of International Pen UNESCO, and also for its charter. The Pan-African Writers Association is persuaded and convinced that the works of art all over the world should at all times be left free to sow and water the peaceful seeds of our common humanity and garner the delectable fruits of peace, of which the world today is in greatest need. Power, no less than International PEN UNESCO, upholds and cherishes the principles of unhampered transmission of healthy and salubrious thoughts through writing and the dissemination of truth, and nothing but fearless truth. May International PEN help to change the minds of men and of women so that their thoughts and actions may always be noble. May International PEN succeed in transforming the whole world for the better. May this conference be a tremendous success, Mr. Chairman. And may International PEN UNESCO flourish forever. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tune, for standing for Mr. Tupiakan. We have our first poetry reading or recital by one of our members, in the person of Miss Patty Ackerman. Pat is one of the few ladies that we have in our center, and a very active one. But Patty, you are come to the microphone. Sorry, Paul. I'm not too sure that our translators will be able to translate the poetry. So those who may miss it might seek translation after from our colleagues. Thank you very much.
Good morning, friends. The title of this poem is I Am a Poet. I am a poet. That's the title. I am a poet. So what, they said. They called me unserious, unambitious. Poetry, they said, is for poor dreamers. They said being a poet, I've taken a vow of poverty. I pondered and I wondered. True, poets don't hand gold until they are old. But I am a poet. I am plagued by words. I am blessed by words. Like a river from an endless source, words rummaged my being ceaselessly. I am a poet. Big deal, they said. They told me man does not live by words alone. They shared stories of how poets have dignified titles, but empty wallets. Man does not live by money alone, I told them. But then I thought, and I sought wisdom from the wise. And the oracles spoke. You are a poet, they said. You are blessed with words. They praised me. As long as your words make sense to others, as long as your words inspire others, as long as your words encourage others to make positive changes, remain a poet, they told me, because you are blessed with words. I am a poet. Even the oracles know. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, you are a poet, and we are proud of you. Thank you so much, Pat. We're now ready for our International Secretary. Joanne.
Good morning. As we said yesterday, it's such a pleasure to be here and to be with all these old friends and new friends. One of the great pleasures for me in preparing for this conference was returning to the shelves of African literature that I'd read years ago. I still read African literature, but this was a particular period in my life when I really just read and read and read. And as I took down the books, each volume and its cover stirred a memory. The red and yellow and black montage with faces of Ama-Attah Adu's No Sweetness Here. The figures laid one upon another of Ikwai Ama's fragments. the hands reaching across the blood-red cover of Charles Mingushi's Waiting for the Rain. I pulled down book after book. The stories, the characters, and the memories of that incredible journey through Africa that I took in literature. And I'd only been to Africa once at the time. I've returned many times since. But that first big journey through literature still remains with me. I marked up most of these books, as many of you do as writers. I had stars and brackets and check marks in the margins, and I went back to the passages. And I just sat there in my study rereading some of the stories in the poems. And for days I carried this big cloth bag around with me with all the worn paperbacks and just started rereading the short stories and the poetry, and even a few of the novels. There's an introductory exchange between the poet and his audience in the oral and performed poetry in Tanzania that goes, I give you a story, the audience, I give you another. I came and I saw, the audience, see so that we may see. Isn't that the mantra for literature? The power to see and invoke, to enter the rhythm of the human heart and dance there for a time with another as partner is what literature does, and it is what pen celebrates. As the former poet says, we live with words. They're an important part of our being. I think for a writer, they're in our bloodstream. So most writers I know have many other activities, but they can't not write. It's what they do. Now, without knowing that I was going to meet Kofi and Adu, one of the passages on my bookshelf that I really found meaningful and I thought was particularly relevant to this conference was his. So, if you dare me, I will read a bit of your book. It actually comes from a small volume called Summer Fires that was the volume of a contest that was held this was published in 1981, so it was probably held earlier. And President Kofi won second place in that contest, and here's a passage from that. Words are birds. They fly so fast, too far for the hunter's aim. Words are winds. Sometimes they breeze gentle upon the smile our hearts may wear for joy. They fan the sweat away from fever's brow. They lull our minds to sleep upon the soft breast of earth. Yet soon, too soon, words become the mad dreams of storms. They howl through caves, through joys, into shrines of thunderbolts. They leave a ghost on guard at memory's door. Therefore, gently, gently, Akofa, gently, take care what images of life your tongue may carve for the show of the carnival of weary souls. As our former poet said, we all know that words transport us over time and place and history. They cross borders. They have the power to connect us to each other and to ourselves. It is words shaped by images and ideas that survive wars and famine and political unrest if we are vigilant and protect them and circulate them and translate them. Again, that is what pen is about. I'm going to dare to read another poem by another writer who's not here, but I'll do my best. Where are you going? Go softly. Nanu, you who have gone before, see that this body does not lead him into snares made for the death of spirits. You who are going now, do not let your mind become persuaded that you walk alone. There are no humans born alone. You are a piece of us, of those gone before and who will come again. A piece of us, go and come, a piece of us. You will be coming when you come, the way you went away. You will come stronger to make us stronger, wiser, to guide us with your wisdom. Gain much from this going. Gain the wisdom to turn your back on the wisdom of Ananse. Do not be persuaded that you fill your stomach faster if you do not have others to fill. There are no humans who walk this earth alone. This poem and the novel Fragments by Ghanaian writer Awoonor sets out a call for connectedness. It is an aspiration that's also reflected, I think, in PEN. Writers usually do their work alone, but members of PEN understand that we're part of a larger community. And for any community of letters to thrive and survive, the freedom of the individual writer has to be protected. PEN members around the world look out not only for each other, but for the freedom of all writers. Founded in 1921, after World War I, to develop a literary community not bounded by national borders or politics, PEN has 141 centers in 99 countries and 17 centers in Africa. PEN has special consultative status at UNESCO, which is an important partner and also a sponsor of this conference. As Frank has said, in 2007, PEN will hold its International Congress in Dakar, only the second time that PEN has held a Congress in Africa. And it is the first time we've held a Congress in Africa that is being planned with all of our African centers. And everyone is very grateful for Senegal PEN for hosting it. And this meeting in Ghana is also historic, as Frank has said, because we have delegates from all around Africa to help in this planning process, but not just for the Congress in Dakar, but to plan the whole African program of PEN and the strategic development of that program in the centers. As I said yesterday, I hope the Congress in Dakar will be the big middle, but not the end of our planning. So we'll be moving up to it, have it, and then take that planning forward in PEN's work in Africa. Many of the PEN centers in Africa, as we've heard here in Ghana, work with youth in the schools and work on literacy programs. And we will be discussing PEN's role in education. And the African centers will be leading that discussion, I think through the whole organization. One of our board members, Mohammed Mackay, on the board is leading that discussion and really pressing us to think of how PEN works in education. And I think it's a very important discussion that we're going to be having. We will also address freedom of expression in Africa, translation and linguistic rights, the situation for women's writing and publishing in Africa, and PEN's role in all of these issues. Each evening there will be literary sessions. Tonight's will feature the Ghanaian writers, along with the Ghanaian Youth Club members with whom PEN works here. And tomorrow evening we'll have a literary session with all the delegates from this conference who brought work to read and to share. In October of this year, I attended the opening session of UNESCO 33rd General Conference. And there I had the pleasure of hearing Ghanaian President John Kofi address the Assembly. He noted the changes and the achievements since the creation of the United Nations 60 years ago. But he also noted that we have a long way to go. He also said that part of the inhibition of the development has been because of decades of dictatorship, and that his government had made education a priority. PEN shares the goals of a free and civil society, where freedom of expression and education are central. I think you'll often find that PEN members are in the lead to achieve these goals. PEN's role is to celebrate, protect, advocate, translate, and champion the writer and his words. For it is words shaped into stories and poems and dramas that hold societies together. They can be passed on from generation to generation. They move across national borders, across oceans and continents to connect people and to provide the bridges to cultures. Thank you.
I'm sure we've all refreshed our minds as to the course, direction of PEN, where we are at the moment, where we wish to go. Mr. Chairman, I think it's important for me to introduce a few colleagues, many of whom you might have read letters from, but without putting any face to them, especially letters that help those of us in Africa. Let me first introduce our colleague who has come purposely to help discuss the way forward for African women writers. Christian Schneider from the Swiss German Center. Christian, welcome to Africa, and we are grateful that you come to help us. For the Ghanaian Center in particular, we owe a great and many thanks to one individual through whom we were able to put our case forward and then pen pick it and help us to encourage our youth clubs by starting a newsletter. I remember in the Moscow Congress, we spent a lot of time with some of the African pen centers trying to help us focus our programs and see where we need support. Our friend and colleague Larry Sims, for us in Ghana, we are most grateful to you for the support you gave us, which enabled us to start our newsletter. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And welcome to Ghana. From the International Secretariat, we've had letters from many people we've read, and sometimes figure to put faces to them, which is difficult to do. We have a very strong team there who are always talking to us on the phone, writing to us, making sure that we are moving forward. And many of them have committed themselves that from these days going, they want to help see Africa move, take a very big leap. Current effort, what's Karen? I'm sure many of you have seen her everywhere, almost everywhere. Karen is at the International Secretariat and did most of the writings on this conference, so I'm sure you might have seen her name in many of the documents. She's one of the very hard-working staff at the International Secretariat. We also have a very, very old face who has been a link to many of us, especially in African centers, for many, many years, giving directions when we need to ask for, and she's always ready to help. Jane Spender. Jane Spender.
Her face is not so old.
Old in terms of being there for a long time. As you can see yourself, thank you very much. As you can see, Jane was previously holding a different position at the person dealing with secretarial issues. Now she's the director of programs. And more importantly, our programs in Africa will be handled by Jane. So those of you who didn't put a face to a name, who now do that, and then direct your programs to Jane. Jane, welcome to Ghana and Africa. There's another name many of you might have heard but not seen. But if you haven't seen Jane's face over the years, then it's not likely you might have seen this face because it's quite new in the office. She is the executive director who took office. Is it July? I think so. Yeah. Oh, I think I'm right. Caroline Whittaker. At the Bled conference, she spent more time with African pen centers trying to see where we have to go. And I can assure you that we are going to be pulling her all the time to make sure that we move fast or faster than we have done over the years. So Caroline, welcome to Accra, welcome to Africa, and we hope to have a very, very good working relationship with you to move the African percentage forward. Colleagues, I think that it's time for us to clear our ears for a reading from our friend and colleague, Professor Kofi Awoonor. He's commanded 2 notes now. And shall we welcome you with a word?
Thank you very much. Let me begin by evoking another voice, which I hope and wish were here with us at this point. Our colleague, Nigerian African poet Neo Shundare. According to him, in the beginning is not the word. In the word is the beginning. Again, according to Neo Shundare, by his tradition, the tradition of the Yoruba people, poetry, above all, is song. So I'd like to invoke for this morning, especially with regard to the mission of pen, a song from the ever oral tradition. I'll sing, then I'll tell you what the song says. Oh, Nalo, Nale, Wolak Bany Choran Zanto boy, Nale, Amarela Bany Choran Zanto boy, Nalo. Nale, you like Banya Choran Zanto boy, Nale, you like Banya Choran Zanto. Kwera kushime mielelo, miwe blami. Baja vio kushime mielelo, miwe blami Joanne choza gwaja pure viaga choza ndo. Ina choza gwaja pure viaga choza ndo. Yo plashe tae, have no blami bifagala gwe nale. Nale, Amarela Banye, Chone, Zantoe. For a writer, for a singer, what can be greater calamity, tragedy, than what the singer says? Mother, mother, they have caught my voice and turned it over to the people of the night. I'd like to share with you a poem with the title Memory and Vision. Memory and Vision. It's the title poem of my most recent collection, with the title Praise Song for the Land. We are dancer and the dance. Time before memory, memory beyond time. We harvest tears from laughter's eyes, are we even sow some joy in sorrow's deepest soul. We are dancer and the dance. There is a journey we all must make into our past in order to come to terms with our future. And so for 500 years and more, we have journeyed into various spaces of this earth. And everywhere we go, we must confront dimensions of ourselves we did not know were there. There is something of our story, something of our mystery carved into every tombstone in all the graveyards of this earth. Something of our history enshrined in every monument and in every anthem ever erected in honor of the spirit of endurance. You know, back home here, here in Africa, we perform our resurrection dance in the company of hyenas pretending to be royal ancestors. And so some tell us that our salvation lies in a repudiation of ourselves, a repudiation of our history of pain, our history of shame, our history of endless fragmentation. But we must wander through history into myth and memory, seeking lost landmarks in a geography of scars and of tormented remembrances. It cannot, must not be that the rest of the world came upon us, picked us up, used us to clean up their mess, then dropped us off into trash and moved on into new areas of celebrative arrogance. Hopeful, somehow hopeful that we shall forever remain lost among shadows of our own doubts, lost forever among shadows of our own doubts. But ours is the intro blues. It is a forever journey into soul time. It is a quest for a future alive with the energy of recovered vision, a future released from the trauma of a cyclonic past and from the myopia of a stampeded present. With so much waiting to be undone. With so much left so long undone, to keep calling our situation a dilemma is just a bad excuse for inaction. Somehow we must recall that we are a people who once rode the dawn with civilization's light still glowing through our mind. And so if today we seem lost among shadows, we must probe the deep night of our blood and seek out our birth port from the garbage heap of history's crowded lies. And people, once enslaved, they say, are too often too willing to be a people self-enslaved. Always. Always we must recall the fate of those who fought to the death of the last warrior. They fought and fought to the death and the resurrection of the final hope. And so they wiped them out. They drowned their screams, burned their nerves and bones, and scattered their ashes across the intimidating splendor of this young history of lies. And so the Asante, the Azande, the Madingo and the Bakongo, the Basutu and the Dagaba, a people who once built civilizations of rare glory, they are now but doubtful memories on the faded pages of world history. So for 500 years and more, we have journeyed from Africa through the Virgin Islands into Santo Domingo, from Havana in Cuba to Savannah in Georgia, and from voodoo shores of Haiti to Montego Bay in Jamaica, from Ghana to Guyana, and from the shanty towns of Johannesburg to the favelas in Rio de Janeiro, from Bukom to Harlem to Brixton, from Hamburg to Moscow to Kyoto, and all we find are a dispossessed and battered people still kneeling in a sea of blood or lying deep in the path of hurricanes. But no matter how far away we try to hide away from ourselves, we will have to come back home and find out where and how and why we lost the light in our eyes. How and why we have become eternal orphans living on crumbs and leftovers. You see, we are the dog who caught the game, but now must sit under the table cracking our hopes over bones and over droppings from the master's hands. In spite of all that pain, we can say without a doubt that as a people, we do hold the world record for survival against the most unreasonable odds. I mean, we hold the most spectacular survival record. But then we must hasten to remind ourselves that just to survive, simply to survive, merely to survive, barely to survive, is not and can never be enough. And so, still, we stand so tall among the cannonades. We smell of mist and of powdered memories. And so those who once took away our voice, they are now surprised they couldn't take away our song. Thank you.
Permission. Else, with your permission, in Zambia, when things are so good, there's a way in which we clap. May I be allowed?
Oh, yes.
You have 10 fingers. That's a kilo. Now, I want you to do this. And I'll say fikisa. Fikisa means rub. Fikisa. And when I say kilo, you will do this. And then throw it to the then professor, you receive. Are we together?
Yes.
Fikisa, 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 kilo. Again, kilo. 10 times. Kilo.
Thank you very much, Attah. And I think you know why we are proud of, we call him Kofi, and we call Alhaji Amma. Why we are proud of him and why we cherish him. Despite his status, whatever it is, he's always ready for the Ghanaians to just came. And at no time will you call him and he turn his back. Kofi, thank you so much for all the support you've given to the center and bringing it this far. Thank you very much. I think we still don't have the government minister in for the president. The president would have been more than happy to be here himself. And he's far away in the north following the Farmers' Day celebration. At the time that we were deciding on this date, I've lost all the Ghanaian calendar events because I've been away too long. So this is to do that. We were with him 2 days ago, and for this morning we'll be on the phone for more than an hour. He's partially bereaved, but he said he will make it here. So we hope remarks. He postponed the opening one to add to the closing one. So I won't say closing remarks, to give his remarks. Prof.
Rather than read another poem, and this is an interesting situation here. Once upon a time, I used to carry all my poems in my head, because that's what the people do in my tradition. Then I followed the book for too long, and now I don't have the book with me. That's a problem. So what I'll do, the poem I just read, usually when I do it, it goes with a song, which is not my composition, but a song from every tradition. Amede doasia gujilo yo. Amede doasia gujilo yo. Yahweh doasia gujilo yo. Amede doasia gujilo agu. Yahweh doasia gujilo yo. Yahweh doasia gujilo yo. Amede doasia gujilo yo. Yahweh doasia gujilo agu. Someone put their hands upon our dawn and stopped our dawn from breaking into day. Meklebe agala polie mete, novinyo agala pese mejo. Agala polie mete, novinyo agala pese mejo. Ekeke mo li baja mo pop kake gong komato. Abloje li baja mo pop kake gong komato. Yatefe gong komato. Echoha gong komato. Ichoha gong komato. Egledi gong komato. Weklebe agala polie mete. Ovinyo agala pese mecho. That's a poem I wrote in Ebe, built around a proverb about a crab. The crab says, if you see me walking sideways, please don't suppose that I've lost my way. I know exactly where I'm going, but for some very good reasons, I find it safer to walk back sideways. And so in that poem, it's saying that, I have the destiny of the crab. I can see all the highways of life, but sideways. That's how I choose to go. The sideways is what? Gong. The poem you read is in Ebe as well. Blow, akofa blow. Nufofola, yapofoe, that's words are winds. Nufofola, yapofoe, or nufofola, heavywe, words are birds of the state in the house by the sea, as the prison house of Asher Fort. It took organizations, especially PEN among others, to put in a word on his behalf. Because at that particular moment in history, it was very difficult for any of us in this country to open our mouth and say anything. And I recall very clearly, and I must put it on record, that even the Ghana Association of Writers could not ask any questions. Not even any of our journalists in this country could ask any questions. The man inside here who walked to the seat of power, to the castle one day and demanded to see the president, the head of state at the time, General Champong at the time, was our big brother, Malaysia-Inca. He was in Ghana at the time. He asked to see the president, and he went in there, said, Mr. President, we hear that you are taking care of our brother. But we also hear that it is against his will. We are not here to interfere with the cause of justice, but we are concerned that he has not been given an opportunity so far to explain himself. By that time, he had already spent, I believe, more than 6 or 7 months, most of it in solitary. The news was carried by the press, but in exactly a week, he was brought. That was when we had the first official announcement about his arrest. Soon to be followed by what? A trial, which lasted for about 2 months or so. When the trial came to an end. He had already served 10 months in prison. He was sentenced for 1 year and somehow released the same day. He had already served most of his sentence. So it's important for us to understand the kind of work that pen does. Sometimes pen is the only voice that could do it. Or members of pen or writers, for whatever reason, feel that it is their obligation to do so on behalf of those, as I said in that song, whose voice is now being what? Taken away from them and handed over to people of the night. It is therefore a very special privilege and honor, I will repeat that, for us to be hosting PEN here for this planning brainstorming session leading to the Dakar Congress about 2 years or so from now. But let me also hasten to add, and I'm saying that now because unfortunately for me, I will have to travel tonight and therefore will not be sharing the rest of the sessions with you. But one point I want to enter here with a specific regards to the situation, say in Ghana, a situation you are likely to find in other places. Often we worry about writers being imprisoned. And there is work for pen to do there. And although I've just spoken about Kofi Awoonor being imprisoned, it is important again for me to put on record that he was not put in prison because of something that he wrote. He was charged with an offense that was described as what when you're dealing with the law, you have to be careful with the words that you choose. Helping a fugitive to escape what? Justice. I think that was the and I say that because the truth of the matter is that we have two kinds of writers we're talking about here, not only in Ghana but in many other places. There are our colleagues who are members of the press and the media. They are always the target of various governments for reasons that I have not completely worked out for myself in Ghana, and I stand corrected. You may write the most outrageous things. Instead of being put in prison, the chances are that you will be invited to join government. And I don't have anything about, writers being part of our government. I think if we go by example of many of our colleagues, they've done their best when the circumstances allowed it. At the beginning of our last major exercise in military rule, just about every major writer in this country was co-opted into government. Attah was Minister of Education. Atuko, who should have been here with us this morning, was, Minister for Greater Accra. Kofi Awoonor was initially ambassador to Brazil. Asiedu Iranchi was Minister for Culture and Tourism. I suppose the only reason why I didn't become one was that I wasn't here. And sure enough, as soon as I returned, I was approached. And I said, "Thank you, sir, but I'm okay here at the university." And I said, "Oh, don't you want to help?" I said, "Well, what do you think I'm doing here?" I would want us to think of the implications of our creative people, thinkers, often being invited to become it, because it's an important challenge. And this was not the first time. During Nkrumah's time, Nkrumah had a special place for what? For writers in this country. In fact, some have even said that at the time when security became so difficult for most others, there seems to have been specific instructions that at no time should any of those, the artists, be prevented from what? Seeing the president if they wanted to. They could walk anytime into Flagstaff House. My one possible explanation is that many of our rulers seems to have been aware of something that goes on in our own traditions. That in most cases, most of our rulers, traditional rulers, even the most powerful ones, will retain what? An official poet, spokesperson. Sometimes it's what's in Akane called what? The Odoman Kumashrema, the divine drama. We know, for instance, that it used to be a tradition among the Asante people, I'm not sure whether it's still being done, that a particular queen mother of Nkranza, I'm told, once a year will be officially invited to the royal palace. And on a very formal occasion, she will perform a long piece of poetry, most of it insult. What we understand that to mean that she's actually passing on to the Asantehene all the things that people have been saying behind his back. That nobody dare say to his face. It was important for him to know. And she was doing that performance under full what? Immunity. Nothing can happen. It is her role to do that. Those of you who have read the Sundiata epic might recall that the griot Balafaseke, on the night before the greatest of Sundiata's battles, the battle against Sumauru Kante, Balafaseke faces him and recounts what? The praises of all the great kings of the past, and then turns to him and says, well, I can't give you any praise tonight. Tomorrow is the day. Give me something tomorrow which I can add to this list. And so it says, we are vessels of speech. We are the memory of mankind by the spoken word. He's passing on to the new king, or soon to become emperor, what his ancestors did to deserve praise. And his challenge is also to do something worthy. So I would want, in that role of being asked to be part of what? Of the words that rule the state. How do we fulfill that role if and when we are called upon? That's a very peculiar challenge. We are more familiar with what? People, it's only foolish kings who, any king who starts imprisoning people, you know that might not survive for too long. Inviting your critics and benefiting from their warnings and advice might be the best strategy for what? Survival. But we can imagine the kind of danger that lies in that. It is both a good and blessing, but how do we play that without playing into what? Into corrupt power relations. I would hope that at some point we might want to think of this. Because we will note that for every writer who is in prison, there are at least 3 or 4 praise singers around the most dictatorial ruler. We should be worried not only about those whose voice have been taken away, but also about those who are in danger of using their voice for the wrong cause. That is a challenge I'd like to leave with us to think about. And my last observation is a different kind of danger. I'm not sure how widespread this problem might be, but it's a peculiar problem I have as a professor of English who tries to use the English language to write poetry in defense of truth. When I'm almost convinced that with the English language, possibly with many other languages, certainly with the English language as I know it today, it is easier to tell a lie than to tell the truth. It is easier to use this language to tell a lie than to tell the truth. I've been trying to, that's why it's possible for us to hide behind, the multiplicity of meanings. And sometimes there are historic reasons. Sometimes it's a question of survival. They say that in black English, when they say this guy is a bad dude, you know that he's the greatest guy around. And so, instead of saying what's going on or up, say what's going what? Down. Okay. That's what we are. But that's a level of what? Of playfulness. But it's much more serious. It gets much more serious. That people have cultivated the ability to use the language to mislead the whole population. And it happens so smoothly, so easily, that the wisest person could also be taken in without knowing what is happening. And let me end with those 2 specific challenges, or rather suggestions for things that we should be thinking of along with all the other things that we have always worried and thought about. Once again, it's a pleasure to be part of this opening ceremony, and I hope that the rest of the meeting will go as well as was envisaged. We thank the Secretariat, local, international, for putting it all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kofi, for combining all the 2 roles and making sure that this opening ceremony has got to this point. I'm sure when we began talking about the prison and Usherford, my vice president's mind quickly got to when he was given free accommodation there not long ago for just publishing what the society needed to grow. So I think that we take the challenge you've given us, that we're going to use the word, especially in Africa, where we are usually producing dictators, and most times, like Prof said, some of us, either in the media or as writers, are part of the process. Dog biting dog. So I think that we look at this issue, take it as a challenge, and make sure we use a word to improve society and improve literature in Africa, which is far behind other continents. I'll invite my Vice President, Alhaji Harruna, to give the vote of thanks. Alhaji.
Mr. Chairman, colleagues, sorry, I have a bad sore throat. I don't like spoiling food. I put in more salt or more pepper when it's been brought before me. So for me, it's something of a spoiling of a dish to try to add to the joyful dishes Professor Indo who has given us this morning. One is poetry. I'm a lover of the Ewe language, so when I hear its musicality, it always moves me. It's given us lovely poetry, good music, and some food for thought. I would have wished we just leave it there without any vote of thanks. But anyway, traditions are traditions, so we have to go along with traditions. I'll therefore begin by making just 1 or 2 points about the absence of the keynote speaker. I remember the very first year our president was elected, one of his very first public functions was to meet International PEN. It was very easy for us to arrange it because I know personally that he's very interested in things dealing with the media and writers. So it didn't take us any difficulty, give us any difficulty to arrange for the president to meet International PEN in 2001. So when I got the message about today's event, I haven't been well, like he said, so I didn't play any part in this organization. But one thing I had said was that, well, we would get the president to deliver his keynote address, and he did agree to do it, but 2 things came up in the last day or 2. One, the National Farmers Day, and of course the Franco-African Summit in Bamako. So yesterday I was on the phone with his private secretary and his press secretary, and they had assured me, which I told them, that the Minister for Information will be here to deliver the President's keynote address. But that the Minister is not here, maybe something else has come. So we don't know, but we'll find out and let my colleagues here know. So I don't know whether I should say thank you for that one to the President or his Minister of Information, but that's that. Well, of course, I began by talking of my own personal enjoyment of Professor Ayido's intervention this morning. I must say a very, very big thank you to Prof. Prof is one of those people I have personally respected over the years, and I believe, like he was trying to say earlier on, he's one of those people who have been helping, and the English department at Leedom and so on, University of Ghana. Prof, thank you very much. And then for the rest of you, I can't mention names. It will take the whole day to mention names. All that I can say is thank you for coming. Thank you for taking our course, because when I spent a month as a guest of the state in a local prison in the eastern region, it was PEN International amongst other international organizations that fought for myself and my colleague. And I do understand from government sources then that nothing irritated them more than the appeals they got from organizations like PEN and the emails and the faxes they were receiving from all over the world from organizations like PEN International. So they even regretted it for putting us in for what was essentially a non-issue. So the big thank you here this morning is for PEN International and all the other institutions around the world that fight for writers' rights and the right to write and right to live. I've often said to people who call me a journalist that no, I'm not a journalist, I'm a writer. Journalism goes with pretensions and certain assumption of powers, but genuine writers do not go about with those pretensions. So I always choose to call myself a writer I'm not a journalist. But on that note, may our pens continue to speak for a better world for us, our children, and the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harruna, for thanking everybody. Colleagues, I think that we have a task ahead of us. And so when we break from here, we all go by our programs, then look at the time schedule so that we can do things within time. I earlier on tried to introduce one lady, but he had conveniently vanished. I think I can spot her now. Karen Effort is there. Karen, thank you very much for everything. And I told Karen that Africa is going to be very aggressive at the Secretariat. So from all west, east, south, everywhere, making sure that you team up to help us to run faster this time. So thank you very much and welcome to Ghana and then to Africa. I think this is the final session of the opening ceremony. Our Vice President already thank you. But we want to thank everybody again for whatever parts played in getting this through, especially my colleagues in the Ghanaian Center. Too many to mention individually. But two of them are here. I want to acknowledge Elvis Adina, who sits close to Jane, and Kofi Johnson at the back there. The other one who is bereaved and traveled is Thomas Amwa. Many of our members are quite elderly than myself. So sometimes it looks odd, since somewhere then send an email, go and do this, go and do that. But for the sake of the word, they do it. That's why we are here today. So we are so grateful to every member of the center who have put in efforts to get this done. And we hope that this conference, after you've spoken of Christian, you're going to be rekindled to bring the movement back to Senegal. Once again, you are welcome to Ghana and enjoy the Ghanaian hospitality. If you have any problems, you can see the president himself, Mackay, or Kofi at the back, or Elvis or myself. We are ready to do whatever we can. Thank you very much. And welcome.
About 2 weeks ago, there were activities all over the world marking the 10th anniversary of Cancer. We did something small here as well. But I just turned on BBC, and there was this wonderful program recalling this rather sad event about Cancer. And then they read a portion of his very last letter to International PEN. And what for me was touching was the realization that he could see that he might not survive the situation. But he was anxious to let PEN understand that it wouldn't be because they didn't try enough. That the work the PEN was doing was absolutely essential. And it must continue. Whether he lived or died, that work must continue. And for me, I think that was a major statement to make in that particular kind of situation.
Many of us here and the delegates here were working on his case at the time. Myself, Larry, and for me was. So it's a very moving case. His legacy goes on.
But he was here, that's when we had the African Literature Association conference here, and he came here. He had just been out of prison, and the address he gave, it was clear that he felt he just had to do what he needed to do, regardless of what the consequences. And it was not too long after he went back that they picked him up again and
remember we were in
the Du Bois Center.
no, we were when we heard the news. No, we were with Lepo's house.
Yes, it was Sutherland's house.
Yes,
That's
we
where
were.
we were.
You know, Ken, everybody who worked on that case can remember where they were when they heard the news.
Yes.
I remember, we remember where we were.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.